one of the big areas that we need to see a leader really take off in is just your micropayment space, right?
A rare situation is allowing you to buy some ETF stocks for 50% off. Learn more at crushthestreet.com/profit2017.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into crushthestreet.com. I'm Kenneth Amaduri, and we got another first-time guest on the line with me today. And yeah, we're going to be talking cryptocurrencies. I hope you guys don't get tired of it. I'm sure not. This has been one of the most exciting things that I've been a part of now in years. So really cool stuff here, crazy returns here in 2017. And I have on the line to discuss this with me, Node Investor. You've probably come across his YouTube channel just searching Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies in general. He's all about educating people, teaching people about Bitcoin and the other cryptos out there. And I love his stuff. He got involved in the markets in the early 2000s, trading and investing. He's an entrepreneur, which led right into Bitcoin. He's known for technical analysis, and he does that, incorporates that with educating people and staying on top of what's going on in the crypto space. His website's nodeinvestor.com. His YouTube channel is Node Investor. Thanks for coming on the line with me today, sir.
Hey, Ken, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Well, great job educating people, and I'm looking forward to your insight during this call. Let's start off with how you got involved with Bitcoin in the first place.
Absolutely. So I'm very techie. My background is very technical. I'm an engineer by education, but I've always been in business and finance and investing. And as you mentioned, I got my start trading and investing actually in the precious metal space in the early 2000s, and that led to stocks and futures and options and other things. And then I started hearing this thing about Bitcoin during the first little bubble in the 2013 area, and did a lot of research, and it just was fascinated by the technology. And the funny part is I didn't actually go out and buy Bitcoin. What I ended up doing is doing some mining. So I went out and bought a bunch of GPUs and did some GPU mining on Litecoin and some of the other altcoins.
That's so cool.
And I did that for a number of months before I decided to just start buying it outright. And so, yeah, started with Litecoin and then transitioned over to just investing and trading directly into Bitcoin and some of the other altcoins.
Well, Node, as I will call you throughout this interview, Node Investor. Look, let's talk about your sentiment towards Bitcoin right now. I know the price has moved a tremendous amount. The case is there for why it could go to 10,000, 50,000. Only 21 million Bitcoins. And hey, if we start seeing institutional money coming into a large degree, $100 billion market cap in the crypto space, it ain't gonna do it. It's gonna have to go a lot higher than that. But obviously, we've seen a big move here with Bitcoin, and there's some concerns over the August 1st BIP 148 deadline and what could happen. We could have two Bitcoins potentially. So let's get your sentiment on where we are right now.
Sure. So that's a great point that you bring up, $100 billion. When you put it in the big scheme, that's a tiny number when it comes to asset classes and investments. I mean, you have companies, Apple and Amazon, that are worth many times more than that just by themselves. And so the total amount of gold in the world is in the trillions, right? So $100 billion is a drop in the bucket. That being said, we have come a long ways in a relatively short time. We started the year at double digits, in the 30 billion range, and last year like at 17. So we certainly have seen a big influx and growth, and a lot of that is not just Bitcoin. There's a lot of new projects and altcoins that are contributing to that. So if you look at the Bitcoin dominance of that, it's dropped drastically, right? We were at 80% before, and now we're closer to 40% of the total market cap that represents Bitcoin. And so we have certainly seen a big growth, but I don't think we're anywhere near mainstream yet. And I think we're going to see a lot more institutional coming in, a lot more mainstream investors and some of that over the coming years. Now, near term, we've seen a lot of volatility. We've seen some pulling back a little bit, and we're in a little bit of a short-term downtrend right now. We still haven't broken that upper trend, but we're kind of more consolidating, and I think a lot of that has to do with the August 1st events and some pause before some of that happens. When it comes to Bitcoin, my mantra has always been, I'll believe it when I see it. Just because we hear one thing, and then the next day someone tweets something else, and it's just back and forth, and that's kind of been the story of Bitcoin since the early days, and it's just kind of rode this wall of worry up to where it's at now.
Absolutely.
Long term.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. I want you to finish that thought. Go right ahead.
Yeah, but long term, you hit the nail on the head. It's a scarcity issue, right? There's only a certain amount of Bitcoin out there, and if Bitcoin is going to win and survive as a store of value, then it has to go up because more people are going to want it. Yes, there's going to be competition. Right? There's Litecoin and there's other cryptocurrencies that are coming into this space, and they're going to have a different function or different utility, if you will. But if Bitcoin can continue on the track it's on, absolutely. I see longer term prices to be much higher than they are now. Near term, though, there's going to be a lot of volatility, and who knows where we could go after August, right? I mean, a lot of the history in Bitcoin has been by the rumors tell the news, and after the halvening, we saw the prices drop temporarily. Would not surprise me if we saw that happen again here.
One of the things that people have said is, on one side of the coin, is if we see two Bitcoins, that could just absolutely crash the price and lose all faith in it for who knows, decades or I don't know about decades, but just a really long period of time. But one of the things that I've seen, and which has eased some of that, for me at least, is the fact that we have other real threats, in a sense, that have come up, like Ethereum. That we have two dominating cryptocurrencies at this point, and that would almost segue over to Bitcoin being in two camps here. If we had two Bitcoins now, and some people have even made the case that if we did get two Bitcoins, the overall value might be higher than the one that we have today. And that could be said of even Ethereum Classic and Ethereum right now with its last hard fork. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think if we ended up forking and there's two strong camps and we end up with two Bitcoins, near term, yes, that's going to be very bad. It's going to cause a lot of uncertainty, and people might just step aside and watch to see what happens and which one ends up winning out long term. We saw that with Ethereum and Ethereum Classic. It was a very volatile period after the DAO hack and ended up splitting in the hard fork. The difference with Ethereum, however, is you have a very strong voice in Vitalik, right, who said, this is the direction we're going. And so I think ultimately that's why we saw Ethereum, grow much faster, right? They're at 28 billion market cap versus Ethereum Classic at, just under 2 billion. But so we could see something similar with Bitcoin where markets decide, hey, this is the way we're going to go, and they may decide to choose one. The other one may survive, but one may end up taking the larger share by far.
Sure. Yeah, no, interesting points, and I know there's a lot of fear out there. So the thing that cryptos haven't really entered into yet, largely, is an investment class. I mean, it's been all speculation up until this point. And I've heard rumors of institutional money entering the Bitcoin space, not really officially, but more unofficially. Obviously, there's only a $100 billion market cap. We would have to see that number go a lot higher for big money to enter the space, which is exciting. But what is your general thoughts in terms of how you see this in terms of someone's portfolio? Just a spec portion of it, 5% of someone's net worth, throw it in some cryptocurrency, see what happens, or 10%, kind of like a gold portion of your portfolio. What are your thoughts on that?
So I'm so glad you brought that up, because you bring up a very important point that not a lot of people talk about. So when it comes to cryptocurrencies, that's the name we've given this space. But, look back on when Bitcoin started, right? It was a quote unquote currency alternative to the dollar, the euro, the yen, and, maybe like a digital version of gold, a store of value. But it was so volatile, everyone said, we'll never use that as a currency. It's just way too crazy. And, dollars don't fluctuate that much. And that's a good point. And as it's continued to grow, it's still a digital currency. But now what we've seen is this emergence of other quote unquote cryptocurrencies, but you can't look at them like that. You have to look at them almost like a startup company. And so when you look at this space, you want to break it up into two camps, right? You have one that's more your store of value, right? The Bitcoins, the Litecoins, that will have that transactional utility. But then you have these other currencies like Ethereum and Stratus and a bunch of those that are more platforms that are going to be used by enterprises, and they're going to be used by governments, and they're going to be used for different institutions for blockchain related technology. And so when you're investing in this, you have to understand, is this a play on store of value, or is this a more of a, I'm going to buy into this startup mentality, where now you're looking at the project itself and the growth potential of the project? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it absolutely does. And it's a good segue into what I want to talk about next. And that is... Okay, go ahead.
And so when the institutional money is coming in, they're looking at it that way, right? So one hedge fund may be saying, I'm going to buy Bitcoin and it's just going to be my gold alternative and it's going to go up. And another one may be saying, I'm going to buy this small project or this ICO because these guys are going to revolutionize the XYZ space, right? And whether that's gaming or gambling or, legal documents or distributed storage or cloud computing, right? I mean, there's just so many categories, and you have to kind of look at them a little bit differently. As far as portfolio allocation goes, it's just kind of at your own personal preference, right? If you've traditionally had 10% in gold or some alternative investments, then I think you should strongly look at cryptocurrencies as another portion to similar weighting, right? If you've traditionally invested in startups and higher risk investments, then yeah, look at some of these too. So I'm younger and I am typically a little more aggressive in my investments. So I'm probably very heavy crypto space right now. But that's just kind of been my style long term. When I was in metals, I was very heavy in metals, right? So it just evolves for me.
Sure. Well, I want to ask you then where you see the value now in the crypto space, and I'll take the pressure off of you for anyone who buys it and potentially it goes down. I'll put it to you this way. What do you see as game-changing or interesting technology arising in the crypto space, and which ones stand out to you?
Sure. And so I think one of the big areas that we need to see a leader really take off in is just your micropayment space, right? So right now everyone's used to using a debit card or PayPal or something, and we're going to want someone to come in and become the digital cryptocurrency version of that. And so some of the leaders that are contending for that is, Dash is one of those. I could see Litecoin potentially being in that space. NEM is trying to build itself as that, and they're out of Japan. So there's a couple of big leaders that are at the top of the market cap list already that I can see going that way. That's going to be huge potential if we start to see mass adoption of one of those for just everyday transactions and micropayments. I don't think Bitcoin is that one, right? I think Bitcoin's going to be more for moving larger sums of money around and store of value.
Yeah, good point. And I can totally see how that can evolve with different use cases. So in terms of some of the big cryptos out there, do any of them scare you, or do any of them have any just blaring red flags that you don't like?
What I don't like to see is these crazy unlimited amounts of quantities that are being produced in some of them, right? So I know, like, for example, there was a lot of talk about Ripple. and how much was held privately. And that's a very valid concern, because the market cap is based on the total amount of Ripple, but the actual amount circulating is tiny compared to the total amount. And so that was, those are the type of things that I look out for. That's probably one of them, but I know they've made some workaround for kind of safeguarding against that and some lockup periods. A couple of others. I mean, there's, when you look on the social media, there's just a lot of hype, and they're all competing for the same money. So there's no doubt going to be some pumping and dumping in some of these. I just tend to stay away from some of the smaller ones. I know they have bigger potential percent-wise, but anything that's sub $100 million, I'm going to take a very close look at before I put any money towards. That's just my personal opinion. Obviously, some of those sub 100, the 20, $30 million market cap ones are going to come up and be huge winners. But right now, when I look at volume and look at price, there's just not a whole lot that stands out. I think overall, the market right now should be treated cautiously. We've had this big shakedown just last week in Ethereum, and we saw prices literally go from a peak of close to $400 down to almost $200 in a couple of weeks. And, $100 of that was like in a day. And so we should just approach the market right now with caution. I've seen a pretty good low put in, but the downtrend yet has not been broken. So we're going to want to see that broken to the upside here pretty soon. Otherwise, you might see another leg down. A lot of people have been saying, "Oh, the bubble's bursting and we're done." Maybe, but when we say done, we just mean we're going to hit a correction. I don't think cryptocurrencies are done by any means.
Yeah.
So just approach it with caution.
Well put. Well put on that. Okay, so Ethereum has been hot. You brought it up. It's number 2. And I want to ask you about some of these coins, especially Ethereum, that have a strong centralized governance. And does that bother you or scare you with, let's say, what happened with the DAO and rolling back transactions? That's a big deal if that can happen, because we got to be able to transact with these with some confidence and know that our cryptos are still going to be in our wallet if we give away something tangible. We give away our house, or we give away our metals, or we sell something. We got to make sure that there's something in our wallet that we can trust, right? So let's talk about some of these stronger centralized governance. And do you like Ethereum in general?
I have been a huge fan of Ethereum since I first learned about the project early last year. And so I did a lot of research, just the whole smart contract thing, and they were the trailblazers that really made it popular. Now there's more competition for them now, but I really like Ethereum. That being said, we've had a huge run up, right? I mean, when I was looking at Ethereum, it was down in the $7-8 range when I first started looking at it, and then it went up to 20 before the DAO event, and that brought it back down. But then this year, I mean, we started Ethereum, in the $20 range, to $12, $20, and look at it, it went all the way to 400, like just crazy growth. And so longer term, I think it's going to stick around. I think there's some potential. Near term, it's just been shaky. A lot of that is profit taking. There's been a lot of ICOs based on Ethereum. So you got to remember, Ethereum, it's not your traditional transactional cryptocurrency, right? The token behind Ethereum is called ETH, and that's really more to support the platform and the smart contracts and a lot of the stuff that's being built on top of Ethereum. And because of that, I think Ethereum is going to be good long term, because, I mean, you have governments looking at Ethereum to build blockchain currencies and other things on top of. So I think Ethereum is going to stick around, and it's not going to be I'm going to use this for, day-to-day buying coffee with. Now, you certainly can, but I don't think Ethereum is going to be the one for that.
Yeah, and I appreciate your input on that, because not many people, this is so new to everyone. We don't know what to make of these fully, and especially with changes. I mean, a month in the cryptocurrency space is years, seems like. Yes. in anything else, right? Because of how much things move, how much things change. Just at the beginning of the year, I mean, Ethereum was, it changed people's lives. People who had a few $1,000s in it could have, made Tons and tons of money.
Huge.
So,
and so going back to your point, though, I'm sorry I didn't really answer your question on the governance. When they did that hard fork, that was very controversial. In hindsight, it was the right thing to do. And I think because the project was so vulnerable and so new at the time, and they were looking down the road and saying, what do we need to do to make sure this continues to succeed and stay on the track we're on? And they did that. And so I think that was the right thing to do. Now, when it comes to more currency type projects, I like something like Dash because they have this governance built into their model where it's more the community and voting and master nodes that decide on the direction, not a smaller group of people that say, we're going this way now. So that's a very important aspect of these projects. And you're seeing some of the newer ones really adopt that built-in governance now.
All right. Well, Node Investor, do you have any just general bits of advice that you want to leave the audience with? And if people want to learn more about you, let them know what they'll find and where they can go.
Absolutely. Thank you. And so my first bit of advice is if you are not in Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency yet, I strongly advise you to take a look and buy some. And you got to remember, you can start with as little as $20, right? So you don't have to make a huge investment, but just get involved so you can start learning about how these things work. What's a wallet? How do you trade them? What are exchanges, right? Because they're here to stay. And the more you can learn about them now, the better off you'll be. I do offer some courses. I do technical analysis, and that's a popular course of mine right now. You can get it at nodeinvestor.com/training. And I also offer a cryptocurrency 101 course that teaches people how to get started with Bitcoin and how to buy it, how to store it, some of those things. And you can find me on YouTube. I do a lot of charts, market analysis. I'm also on Twitter at Node Investor. And so that's probably the best way to get a hold of me.
Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on the show today. I look forward to future conversations and future podcasts.
My pleasure.